Esther. What an unusual name. It literally means, I will hide. It's a strange name to give someone. In the Torah it says, Hastir astirat panai bayom hahu. Hashem says, I'll hide my face on that day. That's a reference to this, that there'll be times that are so difficult that when we'll say, where's God? We won't have an answer, not because He's not there, but because as human beings, our vision only goes so far and no further. In fact, God is most present where He's most hidden. Let me explain this. If you were to take a piece of paper and pour ink on it, you wouldn't be able to read any message. In order to read a message, you have to only put in a little bit of ink, drawing specific letters on a backdrop that occupies far more space than the letters do. Similarly, Hashem's outpouring of self is uninterpretable to humans. We don't have eyes that could see it. So He created a system of filters, worlds, where He conceals Himself more and more. Nature, events, possibilities, tests. But in the end, when we discover Him from that place, what we see is something we could understand and relate to and draw close to, because we would have learned spiritual literacy from finding God in His hidden place. But it's objectively there. It's not just a matter, if you're smarter, you would have known it. No. Esther's real name was Hadassah. Hadassah is a name for the myrtle plant, very inconspicuous green plant. If I was giving a child a flower name, it wouldn't be Hadassah. I don't personally see why anybody would give anyone a flower name, but that's another story. But she was called Esther because of her nature, because of the times. She was living in hard times. Exile, Persian exile. Now you could say the Persian exile wasn't a hard time, it was an easy time. Materially, it surely was. The Persians had no particular ideology other than love of luxury and plenitude. That's not so hard. Why, many of us have no problem living in that sort of exile at all. The problem is that in that exile, finding Hashem becomes progressively harder for some of us, not easier. So she had hard times. The name Hadassah is meant to hint to us that she saw herself and was seen as somebody whose discovery of spirituality came from rejecting flamboyance, opulence, ostentation, and being like this plant which is ordinary, green, alive. She was born to very hard circumstances. Her father died during her mother's pregnancy, and her mother died at her birth. She was taken in by Mordechai, who was her uncle, who was her parent figure. As a great man, he later became her Rebbe. Ultimately, when she was old enough and his wife had died, he married her. He was every possible relationship that one could have, and she lost it. She was not abducted, she actually went voluntarily. I don't know if you're aware of this. Achashverosh had a beauty contest looking for a queen to replace the Queen Vashti who he killed. And at one point he said, anyone who's caught harboring a woman in his house, hiding her from me, will be killed. So Esther went out on her own to save Mordechai, against his will, but she did it, and she lost everything. What did she find? Why was it worth it? So you know the end of the Purim story. Well, she saved the whole Jewish people, more than anybody else ever had. In fact, her times were the only times when we were actually in real danger of annihilation, because all of the Jews were in one country. But she found something deeper as well. Orchot Tzadikim says that there are times in which Hashem puts us in unwanted solitude, where the only relationship we have is our relationship with Him. And this is what it's meant when it says in the Song of Songs, "You're my companion, you're my beloved." This is why the early prophets would go for long periods of isolation. So Esther found herself in the midst of having no one, and developed herself to being a prophetess, and ultimately to being worthy of saving the entire Jewish people. Some of you who are listening to this have no one. This In life, everyone has periods of unwanted solitude. For some people, it's when they're younger, for some when they're older. Orchot Tzadikim tells us that these are the times when we could develop a relationship that's deeper and, in a certain sense, more joyous than any other relationship. We should just be worthy of it.